Good evening. Today's Wednesday night, leading on to Wednesday, pre-recording the shir for Thursday evening. I'd like to first of all, before going to the actual shir, join with the Kahal Hashluchim Chabad around the world in condolences to family Patlarsky on the passing of Reb Moshe Alav Shalom, who was support to so many Shluchim, and indeed very close to my late father-in-law, Alav Shalom. Was very Sudak. He helped him out in various times of very challenging times in a very personal way. So Yehi Zichrei Baruch, and yes, that the pu'ulos, the tremendous pu'ulos which he did during his lifetime, will certainly have a pu'ula nimshech as an ongoing effect. So we have our first question, which I wanted to discuss with you, is actually understanding, appreciating a ha'ara of the Rebbe in a mimer. And I said by the Favarengan on Shabbos, towards the end of Sota, it talks about Misha Mesei Ba'akiva Botla Kavod HaTeira. Shahaya Deirish Tili Tilan Shahalach, and I'll call quotes or quotes Tili Tilan Shahalachas, that you found in every nuance in Torah, it became significant. And he showed when we learned Sichas, Rashi's Sichas with the Rebbe, so you see how every detail of a Rashi, every extra vav, etc., becomes significant. We'll see something significant in the next discussion. But meanwhile, here's a mimer, which the Rebbe said, we learned it between Mincha and Ma'ariv a couple of weeks ago. Naftali Lowenthal taught the mimer. This is a mimer, like Baimer mimer, which talks about when there was a shortage of rain, a drought in Eretz Yisrael, and they turned to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And instead of prayer, he said a Torah, he said a biur on the pasuk, and rain came down. And the famous discussion how he achieved rain through Torah rather than through tefillah. Okay. Meanwhile, this is associated with Rabbi Yossi. And now this piece of the mimer talks about what's the significance of Rabbi Yossi, because Rabbi Yossi is related to Malchus. Yossi is Gematria 86. That's the Gematria of Shem Alekim, Shin of Malchus. And he goes further that Gematria is lower than the main thing itself. So it's a lower Madrega. Gematria only, Gematria Alekim. And their message is bringing from higher to lower, from an exalted level, Atzilus, etc., to bring down to Bia. So the message so far is that Rabbi Yossi figures in the process of bringing from higher to lower. Then he says the following: V'zehu oimrei shevas achim gam yochad. The pasuk which is Rabbi Yossi is quoting, which Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai explained. Achim gam. The emphasis on Achim Gam. And the words Achim Gam again allude to the lower elements of Biyah, which are lower than the levels of Atzilus. And he adds these words, Achim Vegamin Miutin. The word Ach and the word Gam is to exclude, which means to minimize, to reduce, going from Biyah, from Atzilus down to, from Malchus Atzilus down to Biyah. I looked at this Loshen, and it's in my mind. I was thinking there is the Loshen Achin Verakin Miutin. Tomorrow Rosh Hashanah also learns Simonius Achin Verakin Shabbatayra. Ach means but, Rak means only. So the Gemara says Achin Verakin. Those two words, however, only, but, these are minimizers, these are reducing, these are miutim. By contrast, the word gam also, and even the word es, is inclusive. And indeed, everyone's familiar with the story of Shimon Hoem Sunni, who would extrapolate, expound on each S in the Torah. S like means something more. For example, I'm just adding, when it talks about Tevila. So B'mayim es b'sorei. Achas b'mayim es b'sorei. So b'sorei means the skin has to be under the water. Es b'sorei, to include the hair. So es is to include. Gam also for sure means to include. So the Gemara, since the Gemara in the future, Gemara in Medrash tells us that achin v'rakin miutin, esin v'gamin ribuyin. Therefore, this statement, which is in here in the brackets on the screen, ki achin v'gamin miutin, struck me as it doesn't seem correct. Also, what I found remarkable, you have a Hebrew phrase, Sheves Achim Gam Yochad, and there the word Achim means brothers, and spelled with a ches. In this brackets, Achim Vegamin seems to be taking the word Achim, which means however, with a chof, and comparing it to the word Achim with a ches, which is totally different words. So that these are two things which struck me. And I was puzzled by this further. And there's a Ha'ora of the Rebbe. Now, as I've just flipped the screen, and this is in the volume of Teres Menachem, volume Ayin Beis, at the beginning, they've got 3 or 4 samples of Mamorim or Sichos within that volume where the Rebbe had added some comments. So it's Bilti Muga. It didn't come out fully edited by the Rebbe, but there was some kind of written exchange with the Rebbe. And here they're showing how it's fascinating to see how they asked this question. They didn't understand what the Rebbe had said in the Maimer, and the Rebbe has got all these squiggles to include more and more references. So I want to go back. So this is the editors of the Sichos took these comments of the Rebbe as challenging as they look, and they did manage to work them out. And that's the note which we have now at the bottom of the page. So the first thing the Rebbe says, "Hakavana b'zeh b'loshen neifel al loshen." Indeed, the Rebbe concedes that he used the word achin v'gamin as a play on words because it sounds similar to the word achim gam in the pasuk Shevas Achim Gam Yochad. So because you have this various places in the Torah where, let's say, Moshe was taught to make a serpent, he made it of Selachal Sorov, or Simon Nis, and he made a copper one because he made a Nochosh out of Nochoshes. So not Loshen Efel al Loshen. So Nochosh, he was taught to make a Sorov, which is a type of Nochosh, and then he made it out of copper because it's a similar sounding word. So it's legitimate on that level to use the word Achim Vegamin, inspired by Achim Gam Yochad. Then that's on one level. Now to understand how do you say that the word Gam, which means also, is a miut, to reduce and to exclude. So here the Rebbe continues to comment, the Achim Vegamin koi b'dvorim shehei miutim. The word gam is also referred to it's not solely to include, but it also is excluding. Because when you say, oh, this also, which means, why do you have to mention this also? Because if I wouldn't have said also, you would have said it doesn't belong here. So that's what it says. So therefore, the word gam has got kind of concealed behind it a suggestion to exclude. Because there would have been a svara to exclude, therefore you need to have a special limit to include. And in our context, it's a lower level of Olam Biyah, or Olam Biyah, and therefore there needs a greater special effort to bring from higher to Biyah. He gives us a reference to look at the Torah on the word gam, and also that the afilu gam, where you can see this idea that gam means to include something extra which you wouldn't have thought otherwise. He gives us a reference to Brochas Daf Nun Vav, say from the base, the whole context of dreams there. And it says if a person dreams of sees a camel, so then he should anticipate salvation, and brings the pasuk of Anoichi ga'alcho gam oloi. Hashem says to Yaakov, I will bring you out from Mitzrayim, gam oloi, which you say it quickly, it sounds like gam oloi, that sounds like it's camel. And okay, so we have here another source of the word gam, where it would have otherwise predictably have gone differently, and gam is to say that that's going to turn the course of events, despite the natural mute, which would have been the trajectory. Finally, the Rebbe refers to Maratz Chayes to Sukkot Daf Mem Ches Amud Aleph. So that's this, and you can see here how the Rebbe added each comment one after the other. So Maratz Chayes, he was a Rav in Lvov, if I'm not mistaken, brilliant person. And he, in the Gemara Sukkah there, talks about Hoyisa Ach Someach, the rabbis Yomim Ha'achreinim Shal Yom Tov Le Simcha. That the word Ach Someach, Hoyisa Ach Someach, should be, however, you should be happy. This is to say that there's special Simcha on the last days of Yom Tov. So the question is, how can you say Ach Someach Le Rabbis? Because ach, as we said, is to exclude. It means but. However, how can you say ach someach? So he quotes from the Vilna Gaon to say that the beginning of Sukkot, the Torah says to rejoice. You should have the four, the lulav and the esrog, etc. And usmachtem lefnei Hashem lekechem, you'll rejoice. So you're rejoicing before Hashem with the lulav and the esrog, etc. So therefore, when it comes to the end of Sukkot, when you don't have those elements to rejoice with, so you might have thought that you shouldn't be rejoicing so much. Although there's, despite the fact that you don't have those special items, nevertheless you should be happy. Okay, let's move on. Meanwhile, I found this a fascinating, the whole development of how this ha'ara comes about. Obviously with a deeper meaning. So I found that it's certainly worthwhile sharing this idea, as I started off as saying, how every word is takavona, there's a background to it, an explanation for it. And that's part of the appreciation of Torah, that every word in Torah has got kedusha and kavona. If we don't understand, okay, imreku mikem, but we should try. So now, I've mentioned this last week, Ves Hashem, we're pushing for the dedications for to be able to print this Siddur Rabbeinu Hazochen in 3 volumes. Meanwhile, I want to share with you a study which is actually included in this forthcoming Siddur, and that was relating to last week's Shabbos. So now, last week's Shabbos was Shabbos Mevorchim Sivan, and what would be if on Shabbos Mevorchim Sivan there is a bris? So let's go through this carefully. This is on the first part of the screen. We have Maltrel Shulchan Aruch, where it mentions the minhag to say of Harachamim on Shabbos. Then, unless it's a day where you otherwise would not say Tachnun. Then he says there are those who have a minhag not to say of Harachamim on Shabbos Mevorchim, and that's that we follow that. That usually Shabbos Mevorchim we don't say. So Shabbos Mevorchim is a little bit less of a Yom Simcha because we do say Tzidkoscha on the Shabbos Mevorchim, and nevertheless because of the Simcha of the forthcoming Rosh Chodesh, announced the Chodesh. Okay, we just announced the Chodesh, so right after that we don't go into saying Over Rachamim, which is perhaps a painful remembrance. Then continues, not that during Sfira, when this, although we've said Shabbos Mevorchim, over Rachamim isn't said, but during Sfira, on the Shabbos Mevorchim of Iyar and Sivan, over Rachamim is said. So although Shabbos Mevorchim just took Simcha, and you don't say over Rachamim, but these two Shabbos Mevorchim, there's something more. I mean, it's more important to say over Rachamim despite the Simcha of Shabbos Mevorchim. Why is that? Because of the this is referring to the Crusades and the ravaging the Jewish communities, particularly three communities, was Speyer, Mainz, and Worms, were massacred during this time of the year. And as we say, particularly he's alluding to those three Kehillas. And so, because those events happen this time of the year, therefore, the Avarachim is said, even though it's Shabbos Mevorach. Because it's so important to say Avarachim at these times, therefore, there's a next comment that even if there's one of those Shabboses, Shabbos Mevorachim Iyar or Sivan, even if there's a bris, but nevertheless, Avarachim is said. So even though there's two elements of Simcha, it's Shabbos Mevorachim, and there's a bris, and still, because of the importance, the significance of the events, the destruction of those communities that happen at this time of the year, so the Yom HaRachamim, which is to commemorate, overrides even two Simchas. That is the way that it's presented in the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch. We then go to the quote from the Siddur as it's brought down. Alter Rebbe's Siddur starts off, Ov HaRachamim Eimim B'chol Shabbos. So he brings this minhag of saying Ov HaRachamim every Shabbos, broadly speaking, throughout the year, Levad Keshem Mevorchim HaChodesh. Ucheshein Eimim Tachanun Eimim Eimim Eisem. Interesting lashon that it's not said on Shabbos Mevorchim, and perhaps certainly when there's a day when Tachanun is omitted, so for sure Avarachim is not said. Okay. Perhaps however you read it. Then he adds Keshem Mevorchim, although we've said that Shabbos Mevorchim Avarachim isn't said, but there's a Shabbos Mevorchim Rosh Chodesh Sivan where it is said. Now, you could read this to say that when you don't say Tachanun, you don't say Avarachim. However, and that including the bris, however, if it's Rosh Chodesh Sivan, Mevorchim Rosh Chodesh Sivan, even if there is Ein Eimim Eisem because it's a bris, but still it is said. That's how you can read. Yeah. So now then we have here the third part, the third quote on the screen. It's from the back of the early edition of Kahos of the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, which was published around Topshin Chafei, around 1965. And is quoting this piece from the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch that Ov HaRachamim is said on Shabbos Mevorchim Iyar and Sivan. Says, comments, but in the Siddur it says Shabbos Mevorchim Sivan it isn't said. Sorry, it is said. Which the implication is that Shabbos Mevorchim Iyar it isn't said. And the reason may be because of it being Yemeinis. So what's happening over here is Shabbos Mevorchim Iyar. It's the time of the programs, etc. But it's got two elements of Simcha. It's Shabbos Mevorchim. On top of it, it's Yemeinis, and we don't say Tachanun. So we've got two elements of Simcha, and therefore it is said. Okay, so now if you say that Shabbos Mevorchim Simcha with Nisan Simcha is you do say of Harachamim, well then I can take the same thing and say Shabbos Mevorchim Sivan and a bris also. You should say you should skip over Rachamim because you've got two elements together. So regular Shabbos Mevorchim Sivin is just one element of Simcha. Okay, then over Rachamim prevails. You've got two elements come together, shouldn't say it. That's how you can learn Pshat. So again, as you read the Alter Rebbe Siddur, it looks like don't say Tachanun, don't say over Rachamim, but Shabbos Mevorchim Sivin, regardless of it being a day you don't say Tachanun, you still say it. That's how you can read it. But the way it's presented in here, just like Nissen with Shabbos Mevorchim overrides, so to Mila with Shabbos Mevorchim should override, and not Tita overrachim. Now, then there's a reference to here. There's a reference to the Prima Godim, Arochaim Sof Simerish Pedalid, Base Aleph Vov Aleph. The way it's written here means Be'ofen Acher. And you look at in the Prima Godim, and he talks about even if there's Tartil Tivusa, you've got even a bris and Shabbos Mevorchim, you still say Avarachim. And it says even it's closer to Tivusa, you still say Avarachim, something on those lines. So if you've read that the conclusion would be that that Milo with Shabbos Mevorchim say come together, and the two simchas say you don't say Avarachamim, well, Prim Golan says you do, and he says two Lativus, three Lativus, you still say Avarach. Now, what's fascinating is that about 9 years ago, the manuscript of the Rebbe's writing of this comment over here was published in a family simcha, in Feldman's family, Hassan Shur. And this Rosh Hashanah, at the end of the Rebbe's comment, instead of base Aleph, Vov Aleph, it says base Aleph, Aleph. Base Aleph, Aleph stands for Be'eshel Avraham, which means that Rebbe is not saying that Pri Misar Gadol says anything different to what he said. On the contrary, he is saying, you want to understand what I've said, look up the Pri Megadim in Be'eshel Avraham. And he's saying, therefore, just like Mishnah, he's saying that it doesn't matter. You still say Avarachim because it's so important to say Avarachim the time of the year. So even there's a bris together with Shabbos Mevorchim Sivan, you still say Avarachim. So by just that vov, whether it's read Be'ofen Acher or Be'eshel Avram, has changed the meaning of this ha'or of the Rebbe. And if I'm not mistaken, the conclusion would be that indeed that Avarachim is said because of the Hagzer She'edav Hayomim Ahem. This is just one item which is written out at length in the Siddur, which will, Bez Hashem, be published as soon as we get the sponsorships coming through, and Bez Hashem will be able to print it. As we say, okay. So now someone asked me on Friday about a children's group where they give out children on Shabbos for davening, and they give out tokens to the children, and then the children can take these tokens and quote unquote buy a packet of Bisley, a drink, whatever, some kind of nash, with the amount of tokens which they have, and then go and get these various prizes. So is it legitimate to do that on Shabbos? So what I'm seeing here is, this is from the Shmiras Shabbos Kochosa. He talks about children's groups for, say, Tilim, learning groups on Shabbos. You can give them tickets for a raffle, which will happen after Shabbos. So you can't do a raffle on Shabbos. That's clear in Shulchan Aruch. You cannot do a raffle on Shabbos, even the raffle is for food. You cannot do a raffle on Shabbos. So to give out kids cards so they should be able to join the raffle after Shabbos, that's okay. And he prefers, says there shouldn't be any writing sorry, any number of how many units they have earned with this token. Just if you want to give different value tokens, you can give different colors, but you shouldn't have a figure on it worth 10 pence, 20 pence, whatever. Okay, so you're allowed to give out cards for a Hagrola, which will have after Shabbos. Another quote from the Pshul Shabbos Chosa, in another chapter, he talks about that you can, let's say, if I have a restaurant which is open on Shabbos, but obviously from a Yidden would be people want to come in and have various foods. So then they can buy vouchers before Shabbos. And then on Shabbos, they'll give a voucher for cholent and a voucher for fish, whatever it may be, whatever level. So that's okay to give vouchers and get, again here, the vouchers have no price written on them. That's not allowed. To give prepaid vouchers at the value of £5, £10, whatever, and therefore you can get according to your value. That's basically creating another type of money, and you're trading on Shabbos. That would not be okay. So I'm looking at these 2 points together. Giving out tickets to the kids is okay. Using tickets which do not say anything about money to if you got them before Shabbos to get the things on Shabbos, that would be okay. Here I'm a bit more concerned when the two things have come together, giving out the tickets on Shabbos and they are redeeming them on Shabbos. All right, if there would not be any numbers, then I think that would be more straightforward. But if they are accumulating numbers, and with this they've got enough to get this and get that, that I believe is problematic. If it would just be a green gets you a drink, and a blue gets you a Bisley, etc., I think that would be okay. But if they are able to accumulate a number of tokens, that looks far too similar to business, and I don't think that's okay. I might be wrong, and I'll be happy to be proven wrong. I'm always happy to make life easier for Eden, to be able to, especially mechanchim, children, to enjoy coming to shul and davening. Okay, so here we have the following. Is it okay? We have a situation where there's a Beis Chabad, a shul, and in order to enter there, you need to have a fob. This fob is it looks like a credit card. It's got some kind of data or message on it, and then you swipe it, and then it allows you to come in. Of course, a Yid would not use that on Shabbos. So the question is, well, they've got actually this shul, they have a person who isn't Jewish. It's a process of conversion. And meanwhile, that person is happy to be the Shabbos going to. Question is as far as in relation to muksa for the moment. Is it permitted for any Shomer Shabbos to pick up that card and give it to the goy to open the door? And it's a very, very interesting question, because there a tool which is designated, designed for a melacha, for something forbidden on Shabbos, may not be moved on Shabbos as muksa, but you are allowed to move it if you need a space, or if you needed its particular shape for a particular function, you are allowed to. So my example is, if I want to wedge the door open, happens to be that a screwdriver serves as a wedge. So I'm allowed to take a screwdriver to wedge a door open, and the answer is yes. That's called moving l'tzoyrich gufay. It happens to be a suited shape for this purpose of wedging a door open. I'm allowed to do that on Shabbos. So a screwdriver is less muksa than a packet of flour. A packet of flour is called muksa machmas gufay. because it's a commodity, it's not a keli. A screwdriver is is less muksa, more usable on Shabbos because it's a keli. It's not a total muksa. Now the question is, I am allowed to move the screwdriver if I wanted to use it as a wedge. That's okay. Here the question is, it's the tzorech gufo, but it's giving it to a goy to do something which I'm not allowed to do. So am I allowed to handle this card, this fob, and I want to use it as a paper, how do you say, a bookmark? I'd be allowed to. But am I allowed to pick it up to give it to the goy to swipe the door? So there's something which I was struggling with, and someone pointed out to me that in the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, it's pretty much implicit that it's not allowed. And that is that the Alter Rebbe in Siman Shin Ches is the my primary siman about muksa. So in Siman Shin Ches, Sif Lamed Gimel, was it Sif Lamed Beis? Sif Lamed Gimel, sorry. So the Alter Rebbe talks about a candle. Now, just to clarify, in Hilchos Muksa, there's a huge difference between a keli, a tool, a piece of equipment, although it's dedicated for malacha, and on the other side, a commodity, which is not a keli. So I mentioned flour, paint, sand, stones. These are all not kalim. So those are called muksa gomer. A keli, a piece of equipment, isn't muksa gomer. So therefore, you are allowed to improvise with it. It's not a total muksa. You're allowed to improvise, and let's say you want to use a screwdriver to wedge a door open, that's permitted. But here, I'm coming back. Here, you don't want to use it in a permitted way. You want to give it to the goy, and he will use it in a forbidden way for your needs. For you should be able to get him to shul. So it's not so clear. But here it looks like, coming back to the candles. So with the candles, the Alter Rebbe says that a candle is a keli. A candle isn't a commodity. Interesting, because a candle, it burns out. It's like fuel. But yet the Alter Rebbe looks at a candle as a keli. And as a result, you're allowed to move a candle if you need the space. If you want to sit down with the candle on your seat, you're allowed to pick up the candle and put it away. Says the Alter Rebbe, from here came out the mistake of the less lettered people, Shemitaltal in their sholem, that they feel permitted to carry in the house a candle. So why and they're moving it when? For Motzei Shabbos, to light Motzei Shabbos. Or they're moving a candle on Shabbos because it's not really muksa, yeah? If I wanted it to use as a permitted thing, I'd be allowed to. So now they're saying, it's permitted. I'm moving it for Motzei Shabbos, or moving it for a goy who should use it for himself. And the Alter says that's not okay. Because that which we've said, you're allowed to move a Kalishim Lachtel Isel Tzer Gufay, means Kishetzorich Yisrael Lishtamish Bay, when the Jew has need to use it, B'Shabbos Atzmo, on the day of Shabbos, Eze Tashmish Hamuta. There's various criterion here. One is that it is for use via Yid on Shabbos for a permitted activity. And therefore, to give it to a goy, it doesn't count. To use it for Amos Shabbos doesn't count. It has to be, like I said, taking the screwdriver to wedge the door open on Shabbos. That would be okay. But if it's for, okay. So now, but I want the door open. I need the door open. So it is a tzorech. It is a tzorech Yisrael. And that's the dilemma. Now here we have, I say, for Kotoras Shmuel, who addresses this. What would happen if the goy wants to use your screwdriver to wedge your door open, that would be okay. Of course, if he wants to borrow your screwdriver for him to screw screws, he wouldn't be allowed to move. It'd be muksa. Then he says further, um, if you wanted to ask a goy to do something on Shabbos, which you're not allowed to, but you are allowed to ask a goy to do it. Nevertheless, it's poshet de osel taltal initiative. It's poshet you're not allowed to hand it to the guy. So then we have in the bottom we have a note from the Shmiras Shabbos Kochos further about this. Let me just suggest something. There's always this question: when there is a heter, is it dechuya or hutara? Is it a total heter, or is it that the need overrides the concession? The need justifies the concession. It's really a concession. So I mentioned about using a screwdriver to wedge a door open. How about if you have a kosher alternative? You have a non-muksa alternative. You could put a chair in the way. You could use a spoon. Can you use a wedge? I have a wedge. So are you allowed to use a screwdriver when you could have used a wedge? So the Mishnah Berurah says, no, you shouldn't. It's only when you don't have a non-muksa alternative, then you're allowed to use a semi-muksa keli for that purpose. But Chaim Noah disagrees with the Mishnah Berurah. The Alter Rebbe doesn't mention such a thing, and then the debate goes on. And according to that view, you are allowed to use a screwdriver to wedge a door open, even if you have a total non-muksa alternative. So we're going to use the labels of dechuya uhutra. Mr. Brewer is seeing tzorich the tzorich gufa as dechuya. Okay, you have a need. Okay, we allow you to use a screwdriver to move the screwdriver for it to provide your need. Whereas the other view is to say hutra. No, it's not muksa. You are allowed to move it because it's not muksa. Now, possibly, according to the view of the Mishnah Berurah, it's stronger. It's more arguable. The argument could be stronger that it's the need which justifies the movement. So, what's the difference with I need I need to use the card as a paper as a bookmark, or I need the card to be able to get into shul. Happens to be that's going to have to go through a goy. If you see duchuya, it's my need. This is my need. This is my need. It should be justified. Whereas the other view is saying no, it's hutra. It's not muksa for improvised use. So to use a screwdriver to wedge a door open is mutter. Okay, but then because I'm saying it's hutra, on the other hand, it doesn't spread over to allow you to give it to a goy, because that's a meleches isur. It's not in also. What is also? Tzorich gufa means to improvise. I'm taking a hammer to crack nuts. You don't buy hammers are not manufactured to crack nuts. So you're improvising. In this case, you're using if you use the card as a bookmark, it's not what it's made for. You're improvising. But if you're using the card to open the door, to deactivate or activate a magnet, that's what it's made for. That's not improvising. That's using it for its function, which that isn't permitted. One last thing, and that is that I was asked to revisit or just repeat something we discussed last year about having an early meal on the second day of Shavuos, second evening of Shavuos, sorry. So, because especially the today leap year, Shavuos is nightfall is very late. And so the question is of having the meal earlier, and davening Ma'ariv. So, all right, Chabad generally try not to daven Ma'ariv earlier, but if let's say that's what davening Ma'ariv earlier, having the meal earlier. So there is legit, it's in the Siv Mr. Volume 1, addressed that and brought a source from the Ben Ish Chai, from Rav Olim, that it's okay, if necessary, to have your second night Yom Tov meal, to have it earlier. It doesn't have to wait till Mamash Nach. It by me is a Dova HaPoshut, that there's no sense of, if you're eating your meal at 8 o'clock, there's no sense at 10:35, whatever the time is, on the candle, on the luach. You're going to light candles at 10:35 when you're all just about to get into pajamas. That's not what the Takon of Hadlakas Neres is. Therefore, if you're having your meal early, so then you should be doing Hadlakas Neres before the meal starts. You're not diminishing the Yom Tov by starting Yom Tov Sheni early. It's still Yom Tov, so I don't see any down factor. The other side I want to say is about our shul calendar, that when it comes to Ma'ariv throughout the week, we follow the Alter Rebbe Zman, which is sometimes 10, 20 minutes earlier than the Zman, which is the Shtot Luach, the local Luchas. And let's say the Alter Rebbe Zman is when the sun is about 6 degrees beneath the horizon, and the general Motzei Shabbos is follow, and when the sun is it's 8.5 degrees beneath the horizon. So what we've done is for Ma'ariv, we're following the Alter Rebbe Zman. For Motzei Shabbos, we've been sticking to the Shtot Zman, as it's known. So now, when it comes to the second night of Yom Tov, so what time are we going to write on the Luach for Hadlakas Neres? So we're going to have to write the same time similar to Motzei Shabbos. We're going to have the latest Zman. So now we have, here comes the anomaly. The men in shul say, a whole week we've been davening at 10 o'clock. So why should we wait till another 15 minutes? So they want to daven Ma'ariv at 10 o'clock. The women are following the calendar, where it says you can't light candles before 10:35. So then, okay, so you got the men are going to daven Ma'ariv early, or not early, on the Alter Rebbe Zman. They're going to come home. It's going to be just about the time of Lichtanen. So then, well, nothing's ready because you can't get ready. You can't prepare anything in advance. So it's just frustrating. It doesn't contribute to Shalom bias unless the men really are going to roll up their sleeves and start preparing everything for the meal right there and then. Because normally you come home, everything is ready. So because of this, we've been keeping on the second night of Yom Tov, we've been keeping the latest man, despite that we could have done it earlier, but for Man HaSholem, we've been keeping to the latest man. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's shir, and I wish you all a good Shabbos, a good Yom Tov, Kabbalas HaTorah, B'Simcha, B'Pnimius, we should hear B'Suras Tevis, we should hear from the hostages, and a Geula Shleimo with Mashiach Tzidkenu B'Mheira Yameinu Mamish. We should celebrate Shavuos with Mashiach Tzidkenu in Bayis HaShlishi, Sheyivoneh B'Mheira Yameinu Mamish.